What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2019 Lexus IS 350 F Sport all-wheel drive. Huge thanks to Lexus for providing me with this bright red Lexus IS 350 to review for you guys today. So about the IS 350. Well, it's, introduced in the 2014 model year, and so it's about 5 years old now, but I think it still looks good. They've updated it here and there throughout the years to, kind of freshen it up. This year, one of the main new things you can see here are these triple beam LED headlamps, and that's kind of the thing that sets the 2019s apart from others. Now, that's an option, that's not standard, so you do have to pay extra in order to get those new looks up front there, and should be much better at illuminating the road as well. And then going down, you'll see the unique F Sport treatment here for the front bumper. I reviewed a regular IS 350 a couple of years ago, and so they haven't changed much, but I didn't do an F Sport version. So this has a unique suspension, a little bit sportier setup, and should be, a little bit more fun. But I just always have loved, this hood that drops down, and it's just a very low front end on this vehicle, which really sets it apart, I think, from some of the blockier competition out there. Also, the Lexus grille over the years here is something that I've warmed up to, and I think many others have as well, and looks pretty good. Coming down to the sides here, you have these unique 18-inch F Sport wheels that are dark gray and look really good. And then you have a little F Sport badge here on the fender, and then going out to the back there, you'll see basically the same looks as always. Those tail lamps that are LED and look very good, and you have a little bit of an integrated ducktail in the trunk lid there that I always thought was a nice look. And so overall, I really like the more compact dimensions of the IS 350, both whenever you're inside of it and on the outside here. It's just a little bit smaller, while some of the newest competitors of this vehicle have grown a little bit. I like that this is actually a true small luxury sedan still, and looks that way and feels that way. And so overall, I think that, yeah, they haven't changed it in a few years, but I think that's okay, because I think the looks are still pretty solid. Right, for the interior of the F Sport version of the IS 350, well, it's a really great place to be. It's just a smaller interior. It feels a little more cramped, I think, than some of its competitors, not quite as spacious, but it also feels more like a cockpit. It kind of cocoons you so nicely. Feels a lot sportier and cozy, and I actually highly prefer the way this feels over a lot of its competitors. But anyway, first thing, sitting down in these seats, you have these fantastic F Sport seats, which I think are some of the best F Sport seats that Lexus does. So some of the other F Sport models I've tested, they're a little bit on the firm side with their seats. These ones are nice and soft, squishy, comfortable. Love the perforated leather. They're heated and ventilated, but they have excellent bolstering that just is the right amount. It's not overkill. It's appropriate for a luxury vehicle, but still very sporty and much better than the regular IS 350 seats. I mean, with fantastic torso and thigh bolstering, and I just absolutely love these seats. Next is the steering wheel, which is unique to the F Sport version as well, with the perforated leather you have on it, the F Sport badging, and it's a nice beefier wheel too that just still has a really great 9-3 grip, nice little 10-2 notches. You got some contrast stitching on it, just a few buttons here on it, but nothing too overwhelming. And then you have these nice paddle shifters on the back that are plastic but look like metal, but they're nicely placed, and a great feature there. And so overall, a great steering wheel that still looks great, even though it's a few years old. It's been around for quite a while, but there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's great. Another thing that's dated but still great are these F Sport unique gauges you have for this version of the IS 350. They're the same gauges that you've seen in any other F Sport model. They basically all get them, and it's really a nice simplified digital gauge cluster. Lexus was kind of doing the whole digital thing even before a lot of its competitors, and it looks fantastic. And it has all your basic info. You can kind of scroll through there on the bottom of the main center dial there. But of course, the party trick of this is that it hit the button and it slides over to the right there, and then you have a larger display that'll also show you like your audio information, navigation, and a few other little things in there as well. And when I show people that, to this day, it always fascinates people. People think that is so cool, and it's really nice to have. And I just appreciate, there's not a million things to look at with these gauges. It's so just concise and really refreshing these days. And so great gauges. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, you have right up top the 10.2-inch widescreen infotainment display. That was an upgrade that happened a couple of years ago now, and looks pretty good. My only complaint with it is there is no no Apple CarPlay or Android Auto on it. Now, other Lexus models for the 2019 model year did get an upgrade to Apple CarPlay, but I guess because of the IS's more dated roots, it didn't get it for some reason, although it's the same infotainment system in all of them. I'm not sure why it doesn't have it. At least Apple CarPlay. I know Android Auto's a little bit of a delay with Toyota and Lexus products, but still, kind of a bummer there's no Apple CarPlay still for the IS. Hopefully that's something that comes next model year, or maybe they're just waiting for the all-new version that might be coming next year as well. But anyway, this infotainment system is still okay. It uses this little joystick controller, which does have force feedback, so it helps you to land on things a little easier. I think, I don't know, it's kind of a toss-up between this and also the other Lexus infotainment controller, which is just basically like a mouse pad. I think this kind of gives you better feedback, so it's easier to land on the buttons, but it's a little more awkward to use than the touchpad you see in stuff like the ES and LS and all the others. So I don't think either is a great solution, but both, get you by just fine. There isn't a whole lot of stuff in this screen either that will display your climate and stuff, although there are manual controls for that, thankfully. But otherwise, the maps are pretty dated, like all Lexuses. I kind of wish they would update those. But it has all your basic radio stuff in there, and that's good enough. And thankfully, you do still have a normal volume and tune knob down here, so it's very easy to scroll through radio stations and stuff. Nothing complicated, and I do like the split screen layout of the screen. That's always nice to have. Coming down, you have an analog clock, which is always a great touch, and then you have this digital dual zone automatic climate control, and it still is using these capacitive touch sliders for adjusting the climate. Thankfully, it's very responsive and works very well in my experience, and so I don't have any complaints with it. It's a little weird, might take a little getting used to, but I still think it actually looks great, works great. And then you have your heated seat controls and also a drive mode selector down here, which is a nice looking material, has a nice resistance to it. And I will say also, all the buttons have a very nice resistance. Even like the heated seat buttons have a little more weightiness to the spring action of them compared to normal buttons you find in any other vehicle. And just everything feels very high quality in here. All the materials are very high quality as well. Nice leather padding on everything. You have some harder plastic up towards the top of the doors here, but the top of the dashboard is nice trimmed in this soft padded material, and you have some leather down here by your knee rests, the transmission tunnel area, which is great for resting your knee on that, nice and soft and plush. Another little pad here whenever you're controlling this controller. Another thing, have this nice padded center armrest. It's one of the softest I think I've encountered. It's just really, really great. It has some nice stitching on it as well. You'll see your cup holders next to it. But anyway, you open up this armrest and then you'll see a little bit of a narrow, shallow area, and you'll find a power outlet, 2 USB jacks, and an auxiliary jack in there. But that's really, storage space is kind of the weak point of the IS here. There's not a lot compared to, I think it's the least out of all of its competitors as far as places to put stuff in here. So there's not a whole lot of storage in that bin. Like I said, nothing other than 2 cup holders out here. Then you do have a door pocket here with a bottle holder, which is great to see. But a lot of other vehicles have bins in front of the shifter or something like that. This has none of that. So it's kind of a pain that you have to, the only places to put things are hidden away. There isn't any kind of open storage spaces, unfortunately. Backseat space in the IS is actually pretty roomy. Like I said, from the outside, this vehicle doesn't look huge compared to, again, some of its competitors, which have grown over the years here. But it still is a nice, spacious back seat. So I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I have about 3 or 4 maybe inches of legroom to spare there. So plenty roomy. I put someone that was about 6 feet tall back there, sitting behind myself. No issues there whatsoever. Plenty of headroom as well, and so pretty roomy back seat there, surprisingly. And again, you just don't have a lot of storage. There's no pockets in the doors in the back there, no bottle holders or anything like that. The only cup holders back there even are just in the fold down center armrest, and even those are kind of a compromised cup holder where they kind of pop out and they're not super sturdy, but that's all you have back there as far as cup holders. There isn't any kind of hookups, USB jacks, power outlets, nothing like that. But you do have 2 air vents that are small, but are there, when you look forward towards the transmission tunnel area there. And so, it's a comfortable back seat, just, again, nowhere to put anything really, and, not any additional amenities. But still, for this segment, they're usually not super luxurious back seats. And so overall, still a great space back there, and I'm just glad it's as roomy as it is. Trunk space in the IS350 is pretty good, but again, probably not best in class, again, because of the slightly smaller dimensions of the IS here, but still a good usable amount of trunk space, nice and wide opening. It goes pretty far back there, and you know, so nothing outstanding. You know, it's right in line with a lot of compact sedans these days. There's nothing under the floor either. You just have your spare tire, which is nice to see under there, but no additional storage spaces there either. But again, still a good amount of trunk space. Should be enough for most people to carry, you know, luggage for a couple of people, you know, a few suitcases, things like that. But let's start it up and go for a drive. So the IS here has the same basic Lexus key you see in other models. It's a nice key, has a little bit of a kind of metal feeling trim on the corner here, but otherwise just a plastic key, but still pretty nice. It is, of course, keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start here in the IS350 as well. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off in the 2019 Lexus IS350 F Sport here. So first thing you notice is the fantastic visibility. Lexus really got it right from the beginning with starting with a nice thin A-pillar. They, you know, had the mirrors off onto the doors there, so very easy to see there. The hood drops down nicely, so very, very easy to see forward here. View out of the back is also excellent, you know, like in typical sedan fashion, and so that's really great as well. Another thing that you notice right off the bat is just how responsive everything is to your inputs. Throttle response is pretty immediate. It's not overly sensitive, but just is really nice and responsive with this naturally aspirated engine and a normal automatic transmission. There isn't any kind of, you know, mushiness or anything to it. It all feels great. Brakes also feel good as I'm leaning on them here a little bit. But yeah, I love how immediate the throttle response is. Steering is also really a great weight. It's maybe a tiny bit heavier than some of the normal competitors in their, you know, normal modes. But I really like it. It feels a little sportier, and I feel like I am feeling a little bit more of the road as well. Just it feels like it's got a little bit better feeling than some of the more numb racks in some of the competing vehicles as well. And so again, just the small feeling of this vehicle is so great. I don't know if it's because of the better visibility or just the smaller dimensions, but you just feel like you're in a sportier, lower, more compact luxury sedan than a lot of the competitors, and I really enjoy that. And cruising down a main road here, it's also pretty nice and refined in here. You know, feels pretty quiet for the most part. Might be a little bit noisier than some of the more luxurious competitors, but I think it's right in line with most. One thing that has been impressing me, I've only been driving this vehicle for about 26 miles so far, but the suspension setup. Now, whenever I reviewed the regular IS350 a couple of years ago, that had a little bit of a firmer ride. I think this actually feels a little more supple and soaks up bumps a little better. I think part of that is, you know, it does have this F Sport suspension, which is sportier in its tuning, but it actually has an adaptive variable suspension setup, and that seems to really do a good job of kind of soaking up all the little imperfections and just helps it kind of glide along so that it's not quite as stiff as it was in the regular 350. So I think even though this is the sportier setup, it actually seems to be the more comfortable setup, at least again my first impressions here. Another thing I really appreciate about the small dimensions of the IS is that it makes it a lot easier to park and maneuver, and I feel like when I'm in tight spots, it doesn't feel quite as bad, and so it's just really the right size for a little luxury sedan. I think I really, really enjoy that about it. I'm going to put it into the Sport Plus mode, which is something I think you get here with the F Sport version. But anyway, let's turn down onto this back road and see how it does. And here we go. Really responsive, and ooh, it moves. This thing is a blast. Sounds good too, doesn't it? Oh yeah, that sounds real nice. Not a ton of exhaust noise, but lots of induction note there, and oh, it's Sport Plus mode. It really keeps it in the meat of the power band. Oh, it keeps you right where you want to be, and so it's very responsive. Downshifts are immediate. Feels really, really good. So the IS350 here has the 3.5 liter direct injected V6 engine. Does 311 horsepower now and 280 pound-feet of torque, which is actually about 4 more horsepower than before and about 3 more pound-feet. Not sure what they changed. I don't think there's any kind of changes to the engine here for 2019, but they did that. You know, the specs are slightly different. 0 to 60 time is still unchanged though at 5.7 seconds, which is pretty quick, feels very accurate. I think that sounds spot on here. And with the all-wheel drive especially, you know, it just doesn't waste any time. You can get these with rear-wheel drive as well if you would like, which is awesome and would probably make this an even better handler in some ways, you know, having less weight. But this, you know, puts down the power very well with the all-wheel drive. And we're gonna put it over into manual mode here, and let's try out the downshifts. So it's okay. I mean, you can hear when I'm clicking the paddle and when it's actually upshifting and downshifting. So it's delayed. Now we're running an old 6-speed automatic. It's a little bit dated there. And so that's just kind of what you're going to get. You know, an old automatic like this isn't going to have any kind of quick shifts. And so that's okay. I think, you know, living in automatic mode, whenever you have these drive modes here, it figures out what you want to do perfectly quickly. But coming up some corners here, let's see how it handles. So it handles pretty flatly. Okay, that was interesting. It almost had a little bit of like a torque vectoring sensation when I was exiting out of that corner, but it feels really nice and flat here with this F Sport suspension setup. It's really doing a good job. Okay, there's a little bit of understeer. I did notice that the last time I was in the IS350. This seems to minimize it a little bit. It feels a little bit better for sure than the regular IS350 suspension. But I could tell when I was pushing it, you know, towards the very end there, it did want to push. So it still has very high limits, but it doesn't make you feel like a superhero. You do figure out where the limits are, you know, fairly early on. I mean, I'm not going super fast, but these corners are pretty tight, and you know, the roads are still kind of a little bit cold, a little bit damp. Now we're on all-season tires, but they are pretty decent tire setup. It's only 225 wide in the front, but we do have 255s in the rear, which is awesome and should help, you know, at least with, you know, getting the power put down there in the back very, very well. And I'm sure if you wanted more grip, you can, you know, upgrade to some better tires, even maybe some wider front tires if you'd like, and then that would solve that understeer problem, I think, pretty well, because it's just, I think it just comes down to grip, and it's just, I'm just coming up a little short on grip there whenever I really do push it. But it still feels pretty good. And also, a couple of years ago, I remarked that it felt a little heavy, and that was back in 2017. And the past couple of years, cars seem to have gotten a little heavier, and so this vehicle's curb weight of 3,737 pounds doesn't sound so bad anymore. For an all-wheel drive sedan of this class, a luxury sedan, I think that's not a bad weight. And you know, I don't think it really feels too heavy. I mean, yes, it feels a little weightier. It doesn't feel quite as light as the Alfa Romeo Giulia. That is still the handling king in this segment, hands down. But, you know, this still feels very nice and flat and feels really good. The steering also works with you very well, and everything just is a very cohesive package, I guess, and it just all works together very well to do what you want. Nothing seems to get in the way. The transmission keeps you in the right RPM. The brakes are responsive. The throttle is very responsive. Everything works together, so there's no disturbances. Everything just, you know, is laser focused on, you know, what you want it to do, and that makes for a very satisfying experience. Another acceleration. Oh man, yeah, this thing, it gets up and it flies. Yeah, no complaints with the straight line performance here in the IS350. I know people are bummed there was never an ISF for this generation, and sure, having a tire shredding version of this would have been fun, but this is no slouch, and I think from a performance, you know, sports sedan standpoint, it is very punchy, and actually out-punches a lot of the competitors, even like the Alfa Giulia, although that handles better. It only has 280 horsepower in its, you know, normal version, and so, you know, this has it out-muscled, and this has way more range to it too. You have a few hundred RPM extra, just feels much stronger versus like that has a 2-liter turbo, and many of these competitors have a 2-liter turbo with mid 200 horsepower ratings, and with those, you know, they have a more narrow power band, and it's kind of an on-off switch sometimes with the power on those. This, there's no such thing. It's just a very progressive, flat power band that just builds as you go through the revs in kind of an old school fashion, and just is really wonderful to use. But yeah, so that's really all I can glean here from the IS350, but I'm going to drive around all week in this. I'm going to, you know, be putting lots of miles on it. I'll be testing out the stereo, testing out these new LED headlamps at night, and you know, also come back and give you you guys my final fuel economy in the real world here, as well as my thoughts on the pricing of the IS350. All right, so I've been driving for a week now here, and I'm still really enjoying the Lexus. You know, like I said, it's been a couple of years since I drove one, and I just forgot just how good of a vehicle it is, honestly. I think it's kind of overlooked these days a little bit, since it's been a couple of years since it made news really with any kind of significant changes or anything, but it still is just as fantastic as it always has been. And when a lot of the competitors these days going to 4-cylinder turbos almost exclusively, unless you go up to their full-on performance models, there's really not a whole lot of V6 offerings. You have Infiniti still offering the Q50 with a V6, and that's also another very nice driving luxury sedan in this segment with a V6. I think it feels a little bigger and a slight bit sharper, but also a little more odd, where it's not quite as natural feeling versus, because that has the weird electronic steering thing going on. This, I think I prefer this over the Q50, but they're both very fun vehicles with the V6s, and I just enjoy having a V6 just to stomp and get that nice roar and rip from these larger V6 engines. I just kind of miss that with so many of the competitors these days. A couple of things I noticed during my week of driving, though. First is fuel economy. While we're mentioning this V6, it does sound wonderful and it is enjoyable to use and very punchy, but that comes at a price. The reason why a lot of the competitors have gone to Turbo 4s for the non-performing performance versions is because of fuel economy. And so in my week of driving, I got 18.6 mpg, and that was not quite a 50-50 split, but I did do a decent amount of highway driving, more than I usually do. So I was hoping to at least get the city number, which is 19 in this vehicle. It gets 26 on the highway, and 21 combined is what they're quoted at. So this being, a few mpg less than that combined number that I was hoping to get pretty close to, is a little bit disappointing. We are in the winter time here, a little bit of extended warm-ups maybe, and the winter blend of gas, but still, this is like 1 mpg better than my 5-liter V8 Mustang with 480 horsepower. I get basically 18 mpg around the town and stuff. So to be getting V8-like fuel economy is a little disappointing, and I think is where this engine shows its age a little bit. And part of that might come down to the transmission as well, since we're still working with a 6-speed automatic, which is also quite old. If you had some higher gears, that would probably give improved efficiency on the highway that I'm missing out on here with this 6-speed. And this transmission also likes to engine brake a lot, a little more than normal, and it's a little clumsy, honestly, because you'll be going down a hill and it'll want to engine brake pretty aggressively, and I can understand if you're on the brakes and stuff, but I'll just be trying to coast down a hill and I don't want to slow down. I don't want to maintain my speed. I actually am trying to speed up a little bit going down a hill by just freewheeling it down the hill, but it won't let me do it. It'll just engine brake instead, and that doesn't happen all the time, not even most of the time, just every once in a while, and I don't know how it decides that's what it wants to do, but it is just a little bit odd, and I'm like, what is it doing? And then I kind of have to hit the gas or something in order to get the transmission to chill out, and then let the revs drop. So that's really one of the few little things. The only other thing I've noticed in my week of driving here is that the driver's footwell is a little bit on the smaller and cramped side, just because this transmission housing or whatever it is really sticks out into the driver's footwell here. And so it's, I guess if you aren't wearing work boots or something in one of these, it's not going to be super annoying, but I think on road trips and stuff I do appreciate having a little bit more foot room there. Another thing that's interesting is these triple beam LED headlamps. So there's nothing too radical about them. They're, I think, about $1,200 of an upcharge. I think it's like $1,140, and so they're definitely worth it, I think. Again, it's been a few years since I've driven a normal IS with the normal, I think HID headlamps those have still. But these LEDs seem really nice. They're nice and bright and right on par with, I think, most other LED headlamps that I've used recently. They don't really have any kind of active features or anything. They don't really bend in corners. So they're not super advanced or anything. There wasn't any wow factor with them or anything. But they do illuminate the road well, and so, another thing worth mentioning. The last thing I want to mention here, though, is the pricing of the Lexus IS350. So here, this F Sport version, as tested, with those headlamps, which, like I said, are like $1,100, and then all the F Sport stuff to go along with it. This one is $51,000. $51,490. And so 51.5, I think is pretty competitive, again, considering a lot of the other stuff. Some of the competing vehicles, again, if you want that 6-cylinder, you got to go to the full-on performance versions in many cases, and in that case, you know, you're spending way more money. And so 51.5 to get a 6-cylinder engine is getting more and more rare, like I said, aside from like the Q50 really. And so if that's what you want as a V6, and there are a lot of traditionalists that still want that, you know, there's not a whole lot of options, and I think that this one again is still very competitively priced. I mean, even considering compared with a comparably equipped Mercedes C-Class, even with you know, similar features and stuff, but with way less horsepower, you're still, you know, in the low 50s most of the time for a nicely equipped C-Class that would have a surround sound system like this and a navigation, all that kind of stuff. So even whenever you're just, you know, comparing it to the competition that is still 4 cylinders, you're coming out ahead as far as pricing advantages go. And so that's kind of, you know, the solid selling point of Lexus is, you know, they always seem to have a very good value proposition built into them. And in addition to that, you also have the Lexus Reliability, which is something they're famous for. It's a very, very reliable vehicle, and especially nowadays, you know, since this V6 has been in production for so long, the IS in this generation has been in production so long, any little bugs that they possibly might have had are probably worked out by this point. And so, I mean, if you want something that is completely going to be worry-free, I think this is probably one of the safest bets you can get as far as a luxury sedan. And you know, that carries a lot of weight, because, you know, for those who maybe lease vehicles every 3 years, you can have a disposable, you know, vehicle that just you can recycle every 3 years, get something new. It doesn't have to last you a long time. But if you're one of the people that buys a vehicle, keeps it for a long time, wants something that's going to last them a while, and it's not just some company lease, I think this is going to be one of the best bets, because again, you get that reliability, the peace of mind, the excellent Lexus service that they're known for, and then you still get a very nice vehicle, very luxurious, like I said, lots of soft padding everywhere. You know, aside from the infotainment just being a little underwhelming, otherwise it still is a very nice interior and is just a really compelling choice still, even after several years on the market. And that just goes to show how strong of a competitor the IS really is in my book. So anyway, huge thanks to Lexus for providing me with this IS 350 to review for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts on the IS in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.